Hey everyone, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. First off, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone that's here, and for those of you on our panel that have taken the time to come and sit and chat with us this evening. It means the world to us. Me and Caleb, when we were first thinking of this, how we want this to go, this was definitely on our list that we wanted to have a forum, let students come ask questions, kind of get to talk to you all one-on-one. So thank you all so much for making this possible. I am Maddie Duff. I'm the student body president here, and I'm honored to be moderating this conversation tonight. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and kind of introduce you all, kind of give your background. So first off, we've got Natalie Tate. Natalie Tate is the Special Victims Advocate at UKPD. She graduated from UK with a bachelor's in psychology in 2016 and is working on a master's in family science. Prior to joining UKPD, she worked as a regional coordinator and advocate for the Sexual Violence Resource Center for the Bluegrass, formerly the Bluegrass Rape Crisis Center, and a research assistant at the Center on Trauma and Children. She currently serves on the board of directors for the Sexual Violence Resource Center. She lives in Lexington with her husband, 2 dogs, a cat, and her 7-month-old son. She is passionate about creating supportive, wraparound care for survivors in this community. If we can give Natalie a round of applause. Next up, we have Caleb Dotson. He is the It's On Us co-president. He is an undergraduate junior studying psychology and neuroscience. He's been co-president of It's On Us at UK, a student-led organization devoted to ending sexual violence on campus through education and advocacy since the chapter started here at UK in the fall of 2023. Thank you, Caleb. Next, we have Dean Clement. Dr. Tricia Clement has served for over 18 years as a higher education administrator and leader advocating for student success. In her current role as Associate Vice President and Dean of Students at the University of Kentucky, Tricia Clement serves as a senior leader in student success. She oversees multiple units, including Residence Life, Fraternity and Sorority Life, the Office of Student Conduct, the Center for Support and Intervention, Student Organizations and Activities, the LGBTQ+ Resource Center, Veterans Resource Center, Religious and Spiritual Life, Parent and Family Programs, and the MLK Center. Prior to her role as AVP and Dean of Students, Clement served as Director of Residence Life and Assistant Director of Living Learning Programs at the University of Kentucky. As a native of New York City, Caribbean America, and a first-generation student, Clement knows firsthand the potential challenges that students may encounter when entering the higher education landscape. As a result, Clement is dedicated to advocating for the needs of students while simultaneously working to ensure that all students from various backgrounds feel welcomed and a sense of belonging at the University of Kentucky. Dr. Clement is a proud alumna of the University of Kentucky and Western Kentucky University. Dr. Clement holds a doctoral degree in educational leadership and a master's degree in educational psychology from the University of Kentucky, as well as her bachelor's in psychology from Western Kentucky University. Thank you, Dean Clement. Next up, we have Lindsay Dodgen. Lindsay Dodgen currently serves as the acting director of the VIP Center while also providing survivor advocacy and prevention education to the UK community. Lindsay has been working at VIP for 7.5 years and feels like working at VIP is a dream job. Lindsay received both her bachelor's and master's in social work from the University of Kentucky College of Social Work, then began her career as a court advocate with Greenhouse 17, the local domestic violence service agency. Since then, she has made a personal and professional commitment to the movement to help survivors and to make our community safer for the next generations to come. Thank you, Lindsay. Next, we have Tristan Kidd. He graduated from the University of Kentucky in 2019 with bachelor's degrees in psychology and sociology, with completed minor programs in criminology and history. He was a resident advisor in North Campus residence halls for 3 years during his time as a student. He began working with UKPD in September of 2019, where he was assigned to night shift patrol prior to being assigned as a detective for the Special Victims Unit in spring of 2022. He additionally served as a UKPD STAR program instructor and is certified through the Kentucky Law Enforcement Council as a crisis intervention team officer. Thank you, Tristan. Next, we have Libby Hogan. Libby Hogan is a student affairs professional with over a decade of experience in student conduct and residence life. As the director in the Office of Student Conduct, she is committed to fostering a supportive and accountable campus community. Libby's work focuses on student development, restorative justice, and creating policies and processes that support student success. Passionate about education and advocacy, she strives to create environments where students can learn, grow, and thrive. She holds a bachelor's degree in business and an MBA from Holy Names University and is currently a doctoral candidate in the Educational Policy Studies and Evaluation program at UK. Thank you, Libby. Next up, because they are so special, I'm going to let Andy and Justin introduce themselves up here.
We didn't. The reality is I didn't send in my bio. Is what's happening. We're very, very transparent here at UK Police. My given name is Andrea. I go by Andy. I'm a she, her. I was a student athlete here at UK. I played softball and I was a KHP major. I'm currently halfway through my master's at the University of Virginia in criminal justice. A part of the reason I didn't get that bio out today, I'm kind of doing two roles. I'm the captain over operations, formerly the lieutenant over the special victims unit, and we're waiting for that spot to be replaced with the sergeant. So thank you.
It's a pleasure being here. I'm Justin Blevins. I'm the Associate Dean of Students and oversee the Office of Residence Life. I've had a variety of roles here at the University of Kentucky, from risk management to assessment analytics, as well as working in housing and residence life. Oh gosh, over 20 years. I'm feeling the gray hair a little bit within that too with it. Previously worked with Tricia when she was director, and Libby actually when she was there as well with it. My background and studies are actually in educational sociology too, and looking at the influence of poverty on educational attainments for students. So yeah.
Perfect. There we go. Okay, so first up.
Can Sarah introduce herself too? I'm so sorry.
Yes.
Hi, sorry, also didn't send in a bio. I'm Sarah Mudd. I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Equal Opportunity and Title IX Coordinator for the university. I've worked in higher ed, predominantly in student affairs, Title IX, student conduct for over 15 years. I've been Title IX Coordinator at a couple of different universities, but I've been at UK proudly for the last year. I was born and raised in Kentucky, have bachelor's degrees in psychology and religion from Belmont University in Nashville, master's in higher education administration from Texas A&M, and also a doctoral candidate in the same program as Libby. We were just commiserating over the experience of being that here in the Educational Policy Studies program at UK. So I'm glad to be with you all this evening.
Perfect. We'll go ahead and get started with our questions for this evening. So first up, our UKPD SVU advocate. Can you kind of walk us through the process of reporting a sexual assault to UKPD and what a survivor can expect?
Yeah, of course. And I'll let Detective Kidd chime in here for the investigations piece because he is the expert when it comes to investigations. Can everyone hear me? I'm not the best with microphones. Good. Lots of thumbs up, even in the back. Thank you. So a survivor can report by contacting UKPD dispatch if the incident occurred on University of Kentucky property. Even if it didn't, or if they're not sure if the location it occurred in counts as university property, they can still call us. We are happy to come out and chat with them and make sure their report gets to the right place. If they contact UKPD dispatch, then a responding officer will come out. All of our responding officers go through the state mandated training when it comes to responding to incidences of interpersonal violence. That survivor can share as much or as little as they want with that responding officer. There might be some basic contact information that they'll need just to generate the report, but they only have to share as much of their story and their experience as they want to. Once that report is generated, it will get sent to the Special Victims Unit. In most cases, I, the advocate, a non-sworn UKPD staff person, will reach out. And my goal is just to initially check in with that student survivor, see what their basic needs are, listen to them, validate them with what they're going through, make sure they don't have any immediate, physical safety or mental health needs. If they're concerned about classes, work, athletics, if they need some accommodations to make sure they're getting their absences excused, assignments extended, anything we can do to make that process just a little bit more supportive and smoother, we're happy to do that. And then when I feel like their, basic needs have been checked in on, I will check in and see if they would like that report to turn into an investigation. Some survivors might just want that report to stay a report. They just wanted to get their story on paper. They might be weighing their options and saying, I don't know if I want this to turn into an investigation and a trial. I just want it to be reported. I want some evidence cataloged. And if they do want to have the investigation go forward, I'll ask, do you want to reach out to our detective yourself when you're ready? Do you want our detective to reach out to you? Do you want our detective to text you, call you, email you? We try and highlight survivor autonomy as much as we can in that process. They've had some really big choices taken away from them, so we try and remind them that you have a choice in the process with UKPD as much as possible. And I don't know if you want to chime into the investigation piece.
No, I would say you've hit quite a bit of it. As Natalie was saying, if a survivor does want to reach out to me through whatever medium they deem most comfortable, I'll reach out to them when they want me to. To Natalie's point, they've already had that choice taken away from them. So anything that I can do to be honorable to what is best for them, that's what's most important at the end of the day for me, whether it's how I contact them, when I contact them, where we talk. It's not uncommon for survivors and I to only communicate over email. If that's the way they prefer to interact with me, that's the way I'm going to honor. But I'm honest with survivors about the challenges of investigations. I will lead with those conversations, let them know that they're driving the bus, right? I'm not going to take any steps in an investigation to the best of my ability that a survivor does not want me taking, and I will keep them informed throughout the investigation, and work with them continually throughout the process, letting them know what I've done, what I plan to do next, what I might still need from them, and we work together to create a plan to move forward from there.
I think the other, to add on to that too, is that a survivor is allowed to stop the investigation at any point in time. If Detective Kidd says, hey, next I'm going to talk to suspect, I'm going to talk to witnesses, and they're like, I don't want that to have happened. I think that's just unconscious bias that people have. If I report it to police, we're going to fully investigate everything. Like you said, they're driving the bus. They get to make the choice with every single step. He will contact them for the next step and what he's going to do or not do and see if it's okay with them. So it can start and stop at any point in time with their wishes to do so.
And I will add the one caveat to that is if there's a public safety threat. So if with that report we identify a serial offender, a serial rapist, we'll let the survivor know it's up to you if you want to, work with us in this process, in the investigation, but we will have to investigate it on our own just due to public safety. So typically it's up to the survivor if we proceed with an investigation, except in those small percentage of cases where it's a public safety threat. And we don't see that too terribly often, but it is a possibility that could occur.
Yeah, and small percentage, we're talking that's less than 2% of our cases that would be reported to us where we would have to proceed without our survivors' wishes. And when we do that, we try to leave names out and also be transparent and say, hey, this is why we're moving forward because it's a critical situation for the safety of our campus and folks.
Kind of going off of that, I'm going to move to you, Justin. And so how are RAs trained to handle disclosures of sexual violence? And if you can kind of bring up the explanation of mandatory reporting and how that plays a role in it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're hitting the nail on the head with the fact that all staff, really in student success, but especially in residence life, are all mandatory reporters. And one of the things I was noting when I came here is as a matter of fact, I think nearly everyone on this dais has actually had a hand in RA training and actually has worked with our staff in the past with it as well. And so it's approached from a variety of different ways, one of which is also making sure that we have the VIP center there. We've also had It's On Us there with our RAs, talking with them too about understanding and sensitivity toward what it's like to be a survivor and things they should be working through and thinking about with it as well. So making sure that they have that kind of prerequisite knowledge to understand what Caleb would talk about the myths around some of these things and some of the biases that people are talking about and how to handle language and work with it. The other part of it all is we also train our staff to be also transparent with disclosure and making sure that if someone is coming to you and they're going to say, hey, I need to talk to you about something that happened, you get the sense that someone's about to say something to you, that we want them to be able to say, hey, I'm going to have this conversation with you if you want to, but I just want to make sure you're aware that I am a mandatory reporter and there's certain parts of this that we'll have to put in the report and file with that. And we also make sure that they're aware of if they do need to go somewhere confidential and speak with someone, that will connect them with TRAX or the VIP Center or someone they can talk with too that wouldn't also be a mandatory reporter, and make sure they're aware of that as they're kind of working through it. After the disclosure and making sure they understand what we will do with it, again, getting back to most of the languaging and things that you've heard before, it's the idea that we want to make sure that we're giving options and resources and making sure that things are fine. So the first thing that we ask our staff to do is to just triage situations to make sure there's no immediate safety needs that may, mandate a need for calling for, like, if someone has also suffered like trauma or harm, do we need to get medical assistance for them first with it, right? To make sure that those immediate urgent needs are taken care of. If those needs aren't there, then we start talking with them about the different resources we have on campus, including our SVU unit with UKPD, and giving them the option of whether or not they would like to speak with someone or have someone come in to talk with them about that as well. Again, letting them make decisions about the choices that they have with it and where it's going to go. What we also do, just to make sure, because these situations can be very fluid and no two can be the same with it, is we have multiple levels of on-call. So basically the way it works out is for nights and weekends, we'll have RAs for each of the facilities that are on call. But anytime something like this would happen of this nature, they also will check in with what we call our senior staff on call, which is our full-time people who are there as well, just to check in with them to make sure that, hey, I'm handling the situation. This is the steps I've taken with it. Is there anything that I've missed? Is there anything else that we can do with it, right? And part of our checks kind of processes with that, in addition to making the connections with the resources, is also making sure that the environment is okay. Like, for example, are you safe or do you feel safe in your current hall assignment? It ranges from 7 to 14 rooms that we keep offline across campus, so that if we do have an urgent need to relocate someone, if they're feeling unsafe for some reason or exposed in the room that they're at, that we can actually do it that night. That way, as we're navigating everything else in terms of permanent moves or other kind of accommodations, we can make sure that they're also at least in a safe space for what's happening for that night or evening with it too. And so those are some of the things that we start working our way through. Here are options, here are resources. We let them know that also we'll be documenting everything in our Maxient system. And that's just a system that we share with OEO, with Conduct, UKPD, all of our different folks. And that also makes sure that we are notifying the appropriate parties and the people who are involved in the situation as well about what's happening. One of the things that we did that's unique over the past 2 years, as we started looking into not just this, but a variety of different situations, especially as, we may be dealing with mental health crises or just different kinds of crises that students may be having in our residence halls, is I expanded the role of our assistant director that oversees our conduct and student behaviors within the halls, and actually added care to her title. And one of the reasons that we made that choice to do that was we also felt that in addition to handling the crisis at hand with it, we also wanted to add elements of making sure that our staff were both trauma informed and responsive to how they were handling incidents with it, but also making sure that we were caring for our staff because of the secondary effects that could be happening as them, especially our student staff, our RAs, are handling situations sometimes for the first times in their lives, or they may be triggered if it's not the first time they've dealt with something like this too as well with it. So making sure there's an element of care and awareness in whoever's handling the situation, the community impacts of what's happening and what's going on with it, and making sure that we're thinking more broadly about that. In addition, the element of care that we added to is, within a day or two, there'll be a follow-up to check in with the student to say, how are things going? We know other resources are going to be connecting with you. We know there's going to be outreach and things are going to be happening, but also, is there anything you need from us? What can we do for you as well with it? And so we do spend a significant amount of time training through this. Some of our scenarios we have historically done behind closed doors. For those of you who've been our age, you know what that is, where we actually put them through scenarios and had them respond. I will be honest with you, we removed the sexual assault and sexual violence prevention one from that because we didn't want to indirectly stigmatize or traumatize someone who may be dealing with it. But we still do work through it in terms of our trainings and helping them get the same kinds of information with it without having to ask someone to be on the spot in front of other people and actually actively perform in a situation that could be triggering for them. But yeah, hopefully that answered everything that you needed with it. But yeah.
Yes, 100%. Thank you, Justin. So I know one thing you mentioned a lot was, connecting those survivors to resources. And so, Lindsay, this next question is for you. And so, can students access VIP services confidentially, and what protections are in place for their privacy?
Yes, VIP, the survivor advocates are one of the very few places on campus. In fact, I think we're the only office being represented that is confidential tonight. So I think it's easier for me to list off the places that a student can receive confidential help and support than it is for me to say who's not confidential. So the way that I like for students to know this is that everybody's a mandated reporter except your doctor, your nurse that you might see at UHS, University Health Services, or anywhere in UK Healthcare, right? Your licensed clinician, whether that's with TRACS or the counseling center, both of those places are staffed with licensed clinicians, and your advocate at VIP. So those are the places that you can go to and receive confidential help and support and advocacy, and in general, just what I call care. And being able to just be with that person and meet them where they are. And what safeguards do we have in place? Well, the university said so, so I go with that. I will share with you that there's some laws in place that say. Like some federal and state laws that say even if you're licensed or even if you're an advocate, right, you can have confidentiality, but there's also some parameters around that. And so if I learn certain pieces of information, that those pieces of information cannot be kept confidential, any person who sits down and talks with me, I let them know that before they start telling me what brought them to me today. So there's always informed consent. I empower you to share with me what you want and to not share with me anything you don't want me to know, because I'm not going to pressure you. Couldn't do it if I tried. So those particular things that if I learn about them are things like if someone were to tell me that they have a plan to hurt themselves or someone else, I would want to definitely do my due diligence to keep that person safe. If there's a disclosure or a talk or a suspicion or a known act of child abuse or otherwise vulnerable person abuse or neglect by Kentucky state statute, I'm mandatory reporter for that. If there is a known or suspected greater threat of harm coming to or already on campus property, a sensational example, but a very relevant example is if someone has said they're going to come to campus with a gun. I have to report that. I cannot keep that one confidential. Your safety matters just as much as everyone else's safety to me. So everyone's safety matters. And so those are some things. Those are the limitations to my confidentiality. But everything else, it's on the table. You can talk about it as much as you want or as little as you want. And that's essentially how my confidentiality works. I hope I answered that.
Yes. Kind of going back to going to you, Caleb. What are the biggest challenges you see in changing campus culture around sexual violence?
So I've had the privilege of working with a lot of UK students in a relatively short amount of time on this subject, and I think one of our biggest challenges is that it's not something that people are comfortable talking about in general. Of course, everyone here on this panel, this is part of the job description, so there's some comfort with that, but students may feel that services are distant, cold, inaccessible to them. We're hoping to bridge that with activities like tonight. We also have to think about culture and how that impacts students, attitudes around who can be assaulted and who can perpetrate that. Those are challenges too. And perhaps some of these myths related to sexual violence also that are pervasive, like it's not an issue or it is an issue at a certain campus or among a certain group of people, when in reality it affects everyone in one way or another. And if you haven't been impacted personally, you know someone who has, whether or not they've disclosed that to you. So those are some of the challenges that we're working to overcome.
So going off of that, when all of this happens, you do have to work very closely with the Title IX office. And so how does the Title IX office ensure an unbiased and fair process occurs for all parties involved?
Yeah, so our office manages the institution's response to any reports related to discrimination, harassment, or sexual misconduct. So Title IX is just a part of what we do. And so in a case where we're talking about sexual violence, so Title IX, how we respond to that and the steps we take are actually quite prescriptive from a federal level. So every step we take is pretty written out for us in federal regulations. And part of my job is to make sure the institution complies with that. And sometimes that feels really clinical, like cold, like he was mentioning earlier. And I like to tell people that part of the reason that I want to be really a stickler for making sure we do that is if we mess that up, if we're not providing a fair process in that to a responding party, for example, that could remove from us the ability to address that behavior in terms of conduct down the line. If we don't adhere to the process, it can overturn our ability to address the conduct as a whole. So we're really careful about that. So one of the things that we do is we have to make sure that everybody gets the same information. So there's a notice that goes out if we're investigating under a formal process. One of the things that's kind of another one of those myths or misnomers is that just because something is reported to the Equal Opportunity Office does not mean that an investigation takes place. Very similar to the police. We will, generally speaking, that's a complainant or a victim sensitive process. We reach out to that person, they get to decide if they want to engage with our office. They can meet with us and we're going to walk them through what their options are in terms of reporting and process, which includes not just our office, but utilizing VIP or a confidential support resource. That might include making a report to UKPD if that's something they're interested in. We kind of walk them through all the options. And then generally speaking, and less similar to what Natalie was saying earlier, it's their choice what happens next. Now, if we know that there's a potential pattern of behavior or a larger safety threat, then we similarly are obligated to do something anyway. But in most cases, that's not the case. And so the complainant, kind of the victim, gets to decide what happens next from there. And sometimes they want to take some time to think about it and they come back later. Sometimes they're ready to move forward. Sometimes they never want to move forward with a formal investigative process, but just want supportive measures. And so in that, we're going to offer that person the options of all the ways that we can move forward with responding to their report. And then one of those pieces is supportive measures. So that's similar to what we've talked about already, but assisting with if housing changes or class changes need to happen outside of a normal process, we can help make that happen. Our office has the ability to effectively say, we need to make this happen because it is bound by federal regulations. We've got a little sometimes behind those asks, class excuses, things like that, no contact orders, situations like that are supportive sorts of things. And so when we're meeting with that person, we're going to ask them, what issues or concerns do they have? Or they feel safe? Are there ways that this is impacting their experience as a student or even an employee? Because we interact with both. And then we'll work with them on kind of what support options they need. And then if we go through a formal process, there's a whole long process that looks like. It requires both parties, the complaining party and the responding party. Those are the terms in the law that we have to use in our process. So the complaining party is the victim, the person who's experienced the behavior. The responding party is the one who's accused of it. They get the same notice of, we're investigating, here's your rights and responsibilities, and then we kind of follow through that step. So part of that initial conversation is explaining, here's the steps that are going to happen, and answering questions just about the process, because it can be kind of confusing and it can be pretty long because it is, there are certain steps that have to play out. And so we're very intentional about making sure each step of that process that we're being equitable in terms of communication and support resources and things like that. And so similar to, which this is it's related, but similar to VIP, when we have someone who is a responding party, when we send them the notice that, hey, we're investigating a claim, they get referred to CSI. CSI provides what we call respondent services. So they provide some support resources as a kind of a counter to the VIP for a victim. They provide those support resources that a responding party might need to provide that equitable balance on both those ends. So when we send something to someone who's experienced sexual violence, we copy the VIP center and do an introduction. That person doesn't ever have to engage with Lindsay, but we do that introduction electronically. We do the same thing with the CSI office on the responding party side. They get an introduction letter and they get copied on that, and then they can choose how they want to engage there. So we try to make sure that we're providing those equitable support on both ends to that process so that we can get as fair of an investigation as possible, so that we can get to the end of that and be able to kind of go through that process and address what occurred and prevent it from occurring again.
Thank you for explaining that. Next, for Dean Clement, how does the university hold itself accountable for ensuring a safe and supportive environment?
Thank you so much for that question. In all honesty, in terms of holding ourselves accountable, there are a number of different ways that we do that. However, I think it's important to point out that there are actually federal and state laws that require us to make sure that we are providing you the services that you need. So they hold us accountable in all actuality. One of the biggest ones that come to my mind, and I look to UKPD, and I want you all to feel free to chime in, but one of the biggest ones that come to my mind is our Clery reporting, and the expectation that all universities and colleges have to report any type of crime that takes place. They have to provide services to anybody who is a victim, and they want to make sure that you have all the resources that you need in addressing the harm that may have been done. That is actually in our Clery mandate, and every university and college is expected to do that. And so there are a lot of federal and state laws, like I said, that hold us accountable to making sure that we provide you with those services, and we do that in a number of ways. But it's important to us, one, to make sure that we're keeping you safe, but also to be compliant to a lot of those laws that are out there. So I don't know, UKPD, I want to add anything?
Another brief part about the timely warning, I'm so glad or the Clery Act, I'm glad you brought that up, is the timely warning piece. So for certain incidences of interpersonal violence, and don't ask me, there's someone else on campus who's an expert on which incidences require a timely warning or a crime bulletin. She's amazing. I could never do her job. So that's why you see those crime bulletins sometimes, and sometimes incidences don't fall under that requirement to give timely notice to the university community. And I think we've also heard from students sometimes they'll see crime bulletins and then wonder why there hasn't been an arrest or an update. That's again up to the survivor in most cases. So sometimes you might see a crime bulletin and then a survivor, for their own personal reasons, which we want to, empower them to make the decision that's best for them and their healing. They might not want an investigation. So that's another piece of the Clery Act, is the crime bulletins that you all see.
Kind of moving on to Libby. How does the Office of Student Conduct collaborate with other departments to, make sure that survivors are adequately supported?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Office of Student Conduct does not investigate any allegation of interpersonal violence or specifically sexual violence or sexual misconduct of any kind. But very often, or more often than we would like, reports are made to our office about students' experiences in that way. So, for example, we might receive a report that looks like a fight, like a regular fight, and then we ask students to come in and start to gather some more information, and we learn that maybe those students were in a dating relationship, and nobody knew that, right? The report was a good faith report, like, hey, I saw these people fighting in the parking lot. And we're like, ooh, that's a little bit different. And so our team does a good job of gathering information, kind of pausing the conversation, referring it to Sarah and her team. But while we have that student in the office, we walk them through like, hey, we may not be the right office to address this. So we're going to pause our process, right? Our goal is not to cause more harm, but rather to try to remedy and repair harm when possible. And so we often stop our process. We make a lot of referrals to Lindsay and her team and do, offer to walk a student over or really make a warm connection to help a student get connected to resources that are going to be the most meaningful for them. And so as a result, we work a lot with Sarah and her team about which of our offices should go first, or kind of pausing, like, okay, we're done here. We're going to turn it over to Sarah and her team, and making sure that we're right, compliant with all those university policies around scope of whose office does what thing, but also making sure that we're working collaboratively, and that if a student has disclosed something to our office and has built trust with the person that they've chosen to share that information with, that we're honoring that trust and helping build bridges or relationships.
Maddie, can we take a question? Are we allowed or no?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know. I don't know.
Hello. Oh, my question was that I think some students on campus who may have an assailant who's on campus that they might know is an active student at Kentucky, that might be uncomfortable to have that knowledge. In a case where a victim did not choose to go ahead with filing the full investigation and report or whatnot, let's say that assailant did not get arrested or go to jail or whatever. From a university standpoint, I know it's all very situation based. What, if any, repercussions would that student face? If it's not legal, do they face any repercussions? Does this question make sense? Okay.
Yeah, so somebody who has experienced sexual violence really has options of how they want to proceed. They can go through what we talk about is really you've got three kind of main avenues. One is criminal with UKPD, which is going through that criminal process, pressing charges, going to court, law and order SVU sort of process. The other is an administrative university process, which is through our office, which it has some flavor of that kind of similar investigative process. There's a hearing, and that's the university's mechanism for disciplining somebody who has committed sexual violence. That is a member of our community, whether it's a student, an employee. So that is administrative process. So that can result in student conduct charges, that can result in employment related charges, and that kind of runs through our office. The third kind of avenue that somebody has is a civil kind of avenue. So technically you can sue someone who has perpetuated sexual violence against you through civil courts. That doesn't happen very often, but it is technically a route. So those are a few of the official ways. The other thing that we talk with students and victims about, employees too, is that so you can go any of those three ways. You can go all three of those ways. You can go none of those ways or any combination you want to. You can also pursue some supportive measures that remedy some of the impacts of that. So if, say, maybe you're in the same major as the person, or you're in a similar organization and you want to make sure that that person doesn't talk to you, or you're not put in a student group with that person, you can engage with our office and we can put into place a no contact order. And so that is a mutual order. So it's part of why we can do it under Title IX. Title IX has some really specific parameters around supportive measures, not being penalized, not being penalties against the other person until they're found responsible, which is a whole process. But no contact orders allow us to put that into place. And that is just a notice that says you can't talk to this person directly, indirectly, through people, electronically, to their face, written note, whatever. And if you do that, that's a violation of either the student code or employment code, and that would go through either employee or student conduct sort of process separate from Title IX. And so that's a supportive measure that anyone can request, and they don't have to go through one of those three routes to get that. There's similar processes through IPOs and things through the criminal process that could put that into place, where the main difference between an interpersonal order through court and a no contact order is that a no contact order doesn't have proximity pieces to it. So they could still be in your class, they just can't talk to you. So you couldn't be in the same group. We tell them not to sit kind of near, but technically there's not a proximity to it. But an interpersonal violence order there is from the court. And so those are some different options. And it's a lot to weigh, which is why all of our offices exist and why people get that information. You have probably heard us all say the same thing multiple times, that we give people resources and they get to choose, because it's overwhelming the amount of options you have. And sometimes you think you want to go one way and then you kind of get down the route and you're like, no, actually I do want to go this other way, or you need some time or support around you to be prepared to go down a different route. And so we talk through all of those things.
What was your name? Nora, I appreciate your question. Like Sarah is talking about, there are no contact orders that can happen through Title IX. You do not have to have a police report to go down to the courthouse to file a protection order. And I think that is something that people don't realize. Is it sometimes more likely to go through? Yes, but there's several of them that also go through. If you're able to annotate and articulate on those reports of the situation that has happened, you can get a temporary protection order, emergency protection order of those things, which would then be valid outside of UK. A lot of times there'll be so many feet, and again, with all the electronics and all those things as well. So that is something that Natalie, Lindsay, those folks can talk to you about as well, or anybody about. You do not have to have a police report to file a protection order.
I wanted to also just really quickly, sorry, Natalie, I think that we both probably have lots to say on this. So if there is a survivor and they're here at school with someone who has harmed them, and maybe they've tried these processes and weren't successful for whatever reason, maybe they decided they didn't want to enter into them, maybe they changed their mind, whatever the case is, Natalie and I, one of the main things that we offer is safety planning. And that means that we recentral the survivor to say, let's cobble up some empowered resources that you can do, that you can navigate your education safely. Do you want to move? Do you want to get out of a class? Do you want to change your parking spot, right? Like all of those things are on the table. And I think as an advocate, our job is to make the table big and wide and put lots of options on it, not to overwhelm the person, but just to say, you have whatever you want to choose from here, and you can choose one, some, none, or all of the options. And I'm going to be right there with you every step of the way in which you choose. So regardless if someone enters into a process, legal, protective order, court, Title IX, conduct, regardless, I will safety plan with that person. Go.
These are all great answers to a very important question. So thank you for asking it. And SGA, apologies if we're, taking over. I think this is a question you all actually had for UKPD later on down the line, was what options are there outside of police reporting? So kind of related to your question. I know it's not exactly your question, but is it okay if I go ahead and answer that since we're on the topic?
Of course.
Okay, perfect. So we talked about, obviously, if they don't want to file a police report, they can go to Title IX. They can safety plan with myself or Lindsay. They can go get a protective order anytime, 24/7, Fayette County District or Circuit Court, depending on what time of day it is. If anyone has questions about that, you can always reach out to me. Of course, I am a mandatory reporter, but happy to talk hypotheticals and explain the protective order process. I can do that without, having to make a mandatory report. Survivors of sexual assault in Kentucky can also get a sexual assault forensic exam at any hospital ER within 96 hours of the incident occurring. They can do that without a police report. Sometimes, a very well-meaning nurse or staff person hears sexual assault and immediately calls the police. If the police respond and you are wanting to get that sexual assault forensic exam without a report, you can decline speaking to police. That is okay. You also have a right to a 24/7 medical advocate being dispatched to that ER to support you, talk to you about your options, explain what the forensic exam will entail. Even if you consent to a sexual assault forensic exam, that doesn't mean you've necessarily consented to every piece of the exam. So if you say you want parts of the exam, but not others, you can tell the nurse, no, thank you, I don't want to do that. Not all of our nurses are trained on safe exams, so they might think they have to do the whole exam to make the kit complete. That is not true. They can collect whatever evidence you are willing to give them, and that kit can be sent off. If you're not wanting it to be sent off, you're not wanting a police report to be made, that hospital is required to store that kit for up to a year. So we've talked about protective orders, we've talked about safe exams, we've talked about Title IX. Like we've already kind of shared, a survivor also has the right to access supportive resources. They can get counseling, they can go to the Sexual Violence Resource Center, they can chat with friends, they can safety plan with us. There are lots of options outside of just making a police report and going through an investigation or going through Title IX and an investigation.
Can I add one more thing to that?
yeah,
I'm
go
sorry.
for it. No,
I
you're
also,
okay.
I hope you've heard throughout some of our responses too, this like continual provision of here's all of your options, you make the choice. And also the fact that talking and engaging in any of these cases in most situations, in 98, 99% of the situations, does not result in the person knowing that you've talked to somebody. So a lot of times people don't want to engage with us or UKPD or, student conduct or whatever, because they're afraid the person's going to know and we're going to tell them. In almost every circumstance, though, uh, there are circumstances where this isn't true, but in most cases, we're not going to notify that person who's done that behavior that you've come and talked to us, right? And so it's important I want people to know that you can come and talk, ask all your questions, talk about all the hypotheticals or the real life scenarios and weigh all your options and walk away, and no automatic kind of notification is going to go to that person that you've asked those questions and you're considering those options. I think that's important for people to know.
All right. So our next question is going to be back to, UKPD. And so what steps has UKPD taken to build trust with students regarding sexual violence response?
I think it starts with having open conversations like this. I think a lot of people look at law enforcement as kind of this entity that sits behind a cloud that we don't have a full understanding of what goes on. We're fully transparent in our work. If we weren't, we wouldn't be open to having these types of conversations. I'm honest with the survivors that I work with. I'm honest with the community members that I interact with. And we would love to be a part of more things like this. If you're a part of a student organization, know somebody who's in a student organization, know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who's in a student organization, please invite us out. We want to know what the community wants from us. We already hold ourselves to a very high standard, but we want to know what the university community as a whole expects from this police department. What level of professionalism? What are we doing that's working? What are we doing that's not working? We want to know those things because we're public servants. You guys are the public. We care about this community, and the more we can have these types of conversations, we'd appreciate it.
And I just want to add, I feel like UKPD has done a phenomenal job at being in a lot of our spaces, whether that's a student org event or our residence halls, many spaces that students occupy, not in the capacity of having to confront someone or something of that nature, but truly there to be supportive of students and be accessible, I believe, to students so that they can ask whatever questions and get to know them on a friendly level. So that way, when you do find yourself in a situation where you're needing someone to talk to related to whatever it may be, you have a familiar face as a result of a lot of the work that they do. So I just wanted to say that you all are doing such a great job.
Thank you so much. That's really nice to hear from the dean. That's great. I think us doing more outreach, Natalie's been a big part of that when she joined our team, for us to get involved with events that are now cyclical every year, and we keep adding more on. So people know that we are here and we exist. And most importantly, with our survivors, we're going to believe them. And that doesn't matter if they go forward with the case or do not go forward with the case, or say, hey, I want to go talk to VIP after this, or that's irrelevant. The biggest thing is that we're going to believe them.
I'll just add really briefly, having been an undergraduate student when there wasn't a special victims unit, I think also just the creation of this unit is another step that UKPD took, which was spearheaded by President Capilouto and Chief Monroe. They realized that interpersonal violence was happening at a high rate. That's not a UK specific problem, unfortunately. It's a problem across the country at college campuses. So they really wanted to make sure that our police department was handling these cases with care, with compassion, and that there was a specifically trained task force here to respond to survivors. I think the creation of the unit itself was also a step that they were taking. And as Detective Kidd said, we're a newer unit. So if we do something wrong, or if you want us to get involved in something that we're not doing, please reach out, because we want to be here for students and we want to mold the unit based on what students feel like they need from us.
Last question before I'll open the floor up for anybody to ask. Dean Clement, if a student feels the university is not doing enough, what avenues do they have to push for change?
Um, that is a really good question. And in all honesty, I think the most important response to that is that we truly do want our students to be advocates. And we want our students to reach out to us if there are concerns that they see, or if maybe they feel like policies need to be shaped or serve students in a different way. This forum in particular actually was created as a result of students coming to us. And I looked to Kayla because they came to us and said, there's a concern amongst the student body, and we want to make sure that our students are aware. And so the Dean of Students office is always open. We actually host a number of different forums, Donuts with the Dean, all types of different spaces where students can come in and just talk to us about anything that they see on campus and any concerns that they may have, any changes they want to make. We are open to listening to those. This is just one example, but there are tons of other examples on our campus that actually started because a student came to us and said, hey, I have concerns about this. Can we talk? In those spaces, we often can bring in different administrators who have the ability to do or change many of the things that are being brought to our attention. So we always say start with the Dean of Students area, and we'll make sure you get to the right place. And your voice is always important and always heard. So.
All right. So does anybody in the crowd have any questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there are any data available either from the, I can't remember the exact office names, but like the Title IX investigations or the SVU, of kind of the results of these investigations, like what percentage of these cases the respondent or the perpetrator is found responsible, and kind of what the, I don't know, again, what they're called, but like the kind of punitive measures that are taken. I'm asking this because I was an undergrad at University of Michigan, and I think that some of the challenges there that I saw others face is just kind of like not being aware of how lengthy and emotionally draining these processes can be, while many of these cases don't end up going to prosecution because of lack of evidence, or cases maybe being found responsible in the Title IX investigation, but not really having punitive measures that are like worth the process of the investigation itself. So I was just wondering if there's any data available on that, and like what advice you guys would have for us as students if we were to like have to talk to a someone who is like considering reporting or not.
So to address the statistics portion of your question, our office does keep a log of all the reports that do come to us. We also keep track of the outcomes of those cases. To your point, yes, it is a long process. That is another topic that I cover with survivors when I first start working with them, that if they do decide to pursue an investigation, it is not uncommon for them to take several months. If we're waiting on a piece of evidence like a forensic exam, it could take us over a year to get that evidence back. And you're right too, in that time, a lot of survivors may decide that I'm not ready to move forward with this. You know, this isn't what I want now, or I don't want this now, but maybe I will later. You know, either of those cases. And like we said earlier, we'll stop an investigation if a survivor asks us to, unless there is one of those exigent circumstances that we've talked about earlier. But as far as punitive measures go, for a survivor to see a case, you know, all the way through criminal charges and prosecution, the court system in and of itself is, you know, diametrically opposed to what a survivor needs to to heal from that, right? And that's why the biggest focus of what we do is restoring that survivor to the closest, what their new normal, or, you know, or as close to normal as we can, you know, restore a survivor having gone through something as traumatic as what they've experienced, and helping them navigate that criminal justice process with dignity. But the criminal justice process is frustrating. It is. And even if a perpetrator is found guilty in a court of law for an offense, there's no guarantee that it's going to be the offense that they were originally accused of. There is always a possibility that a perpetrator's offense gets amended from a felony to a misdemeanor, a high-level misdemeanor to a low-level misdemeanor, and there's no way that I can guarantee what an outcome is going to be, and that's what I'll never do, is guarantee an outcome.
I think I'm just really like thankful to hear you acknowledge that, because it's, yeah, I think that is like the reality of what is going on. And so the fact that you're able to like tell survivors that maybe upfront when you're working with them of the reality of the process is like, I appreciate hearing that.
Yeah, in general, the police are, I don't want to say equally as frustrated with the criminal justice system as, our victims and survivors, but it's frustrating. I've been in police for 21 years now. Has it gotten better? Yes. Is it close to where it needs to be? Absolutely not. And as far as you're wanting to look at statistics, our crime statistics are on our website. Well, that's another federal law that we have to keep them posted for, I think it's a 3 or 4 year period. We have them much longer than that. It's like 5 or 6. So if you want to know what's going on in your community as far as what's being reported to police, that's where you need to go and look at those things. Everything is on there, anything we get called to, and you can sort those things out. If you want to do interpersonal violence or thefts, which is our number one crime, always has been for 21 years. That has not changed. But that's where you'd find all those statistics as well.
All right. I think we have a question back here from Senator Brumley.
Hi, first of all, thank you all so much for coming out to the forum tonight. It's really appreciated. And I know the student body, it's on us, other organizations, in addition to the new initiative in UK SGA, even the Wildcat Safety Alliance Caucus that was really formed as a result of what's been going on around campus. And I know UKPD, you all just touched on this, but could you elaborate a little further, specifically in regards to the crime bulletin, the crime log? I know we briefly touched on it, and not specifics into the nuances, but I think one of the concerns that a lot of students have had is in regards to, you see information posted on residents' dorms regarding blank crime that takes place, but then it seems like on the crime log that something that should constitute, from a student perspective, that should constitute a crime bulletin is not a crime bulletin, and that gap between how we're communicating those differences, and so we can ensure that transparency between when it comes to sexual violence, when that's occurring on campus, and how we're best communicating that to other campus community members. Is it through the crime bulletin, or is UKPD or other agencies looking into other methods to communicate that transparency up front with students, if that makes sense?
So that's a very big question, but understandable. This is often one we get. So again, the crime bulletin and the timely warnings are a federal mandate that we have to abide by. The intent of it is to notify and be transparent with our students to let them know what's happening in their community. Because before it existed, things were going on and nobody knew they were going on. So that's the whole point, is to send those out. The perpetrator is known, that's that way we don't have somebody on the loose that is here or there. Some of the, and again, we'd have to talk to the folks that actually put out the crime bulletins to know all the criteria. But I do know that part of it is if something has been delayed reported in the time it was reported. So sometimes that kind of seems miscued a little bit, because this was reported, but it happened 6 months ago. That is not going to meet the criteria for a crime bulletin. So there's a lot of measures that go into it as to when and why they go out. We try to keep them as vague as possible, so that way our victim isn't like, everybody is gonna know that's me. And they have changed over time with some of the concerns and stuff we've had from some of our victims as well. But again, they're mandated federally that we have to put that timely warning out. Hopefully that answers part of your question.
Yeah, just that clarification, and we don't have to get into the nuances, but I think it's reassuring to hear the real intent behind the crime bulletin, and not like you said, it is a federal mandate, and so it's not necessarily something that the university picks and chooses to say in terms of reporting. It's that federally mandated system for those purposes, of course, but then, of course, you all on your part are doing what you can do to be transparent upfront to the student body. So that was reassuring to hear.
I appreciate that. And the thing is that how people perceive them and take them in, you're allowed to take them however you take that in. If it makes it more concerning, if it's better, okay, gives you a sense of relief. That's and everything in between. We're not expecting everybody to be happy with these, but just again, that transparency of why we're doing it. And the intent is to be transparent, letting you know what's happening within your community and in your college. So that way, what is happening from, all the things, so you can just have the knowledge that you deserve to have. And I don't love that different people take a different way, but that's what makes the world go round, right? Is everybody's allowed to perceive that how they need to perceive it.
Okay, we'll have Trenton go next.
All right. Hello. My question is for anybody in UK administration who has the relevant knowledge to answer. First-year students at UK have to undergo a sexual violence prevention training. Could I get your perspective on the current structure of that training, its effectiveness, and any potential reforms that are being considered?
I might be able to talk a little bit about that. So the sexual assault prevention for undergraduate students is actually a requirement for compliance purposes. So we have to have that. And so the idea of reform, yes, we're open to that. And it also has to meet compliance. So I don't hate the idea that as soon as you get here, you get messaging around how we handle things. And I actually would like to improve the message to say that we don't tolerate violence here. Okay. So I would like some of that too. And I think hopefully I'm answering the question that you're hoping for, is that it's not just for any incoming like freshman students, it's for any transfer students, any new graduate students, right? We want for students to be able to know what the resources are, what it is that constitutes a sexual misconduct behavior, and we want them to feel like they have some level of understanding of how to access the resources that are here as well from that. And we have like a very limited time frame to do that, right? So I think that as a person, just as a human being, clicking through slides may not match up or line up with everyone's learning style. And I'm trying to think through how we can do mass education, right? And stay into that compliance realm of like, you have to, must, and shall do these things. Is that helpful for you to know about that? Okay.
Can I piggyback on that? I think it's important that is a primary education, right? So it's all new students, regardless of their status, have to do that. And that's the first exposure. And the goal is simply to say, here's what this means and how to find it, and just get it somewhere in someone's brain so that when they or a friend experience it, they at least remember there was a thing I did when I started and I sort of know where to go to find that. But it's never going to be honestly enough if that's it, right? And so doing things like this, the initiatives out of VIP around Green Dot and other ways that we show up in other facets, because we know from learning that people never retain stuff until they hear it multiple times and really have to hear it in multiple ways. And so it's a first step to introduce it and get that immediately, because we know statistically speaking, especially when it comes to first-time freshmen, that first 6 to 8 weeks of the semester is the time that they're most vulnerable to experiencing something like this. And so getting it right in front of them as soon as they get here is really important. I'll add that we do something similar for employees. So new employees have to complete a similar training as a part of their orientation program. New supervisors have an additional thing that they do that's a part of that. And so there's other ways that we get that in front of all members of our community, but it's a piece of the education puzzle. That alone can never be the whole puzzle, because we've got to get it in front of people in multiple ways.
Sorry, you totally stole my answer.
I'm so sorry.
No, I say that to say I was honestly thinking that because it does have to be a multi-faceted approach in terms of making sure that our students have all the information. So literally, you may see that in that one-time survey, but then you're also going to see it again in UK 101 curriculum, and you're going to see it again in the residence halls at your first floor meeting, and then you see it again during K Week and so forth and so on. And then if you join Penn Hellenic or IFC or any of our Greek facility or organizations, you'll see it again in their training, right? And so it has to be a multifaceted approach just to make sure that students are retaining that information and that they know that these resources are available. And so I hope that does get at your answer, but I think research shows that it needs to be repetitive as much as it can be.
And I'd like to address this a little bit too. I know you targeted the question towards administrators, but as a student here on this panel, I think I have a good student perspective, and I can speak a little bit more openly about university procedures too from a student perspective. And I don't want to say that the online training is bad, but it is certainly inadequate. And the research shows there's a really great study that looked at some responses on what needed to change in university sexual violence prevention modules, and really online modules are a terrible format for it. They are fulfilling that requirement, that legal requirement. But then we have organizations like It's On Us, not to champion ourselves, but we're trying to fill that gap. So we really heavily look at the research that shows that peer-to-peer education is the superior way to teach these topics. We take that to heart. We hold workshops. We know that UK admins are so open to working with us. Like, we partnered with Resident Life to train the RAs with a special module this last fall, and we really looked at the themes that had come up about what how these trainings could be improved, and we use that, and we're still looking at that information too. We need help for training, because that is we have a limited administrative team at UK, limited staff, limited faculty, but we have a very large student body, and since it's the most effective group of educators that we can have for our peers, that is a way that students, if they feel that they would like to, they can definitely help out in that regard. And if you have improvements, suggestions for improvements, the UK administrators, Dean Clement and some of these other people up here, they are very open to having meetings and receiving that feedback, just in our experience. So I would really suggest and recommend for anyone who does have those recommendations to bring them forward, and so that it can be the best program that it can be.
Okay, I think we've got two. I'm sorry, John. I think we've got two more questions. And so I'll let you go first, and then I'll hand it off back there.
All right, hello. I just wanted to again thank y'all for being here and just participating in this forum. I know that it means so much to everybody here. I was just curious. There are over 50 blue button emergency towers on campus, not including their preventative aspect. I was curious how effective they are, and if there are any statistics surrounding their effectiveness. And then further, if those have been proven to be effective, is there a possible equivalent when it comes to having those emergency towers type thing in the residence hall, given that the majority of reports reported to UKPD regarding sexual assault have been occurring in residence halls?
Yes. So to address the blue phones, those bring directly to UK Police Dispatch. You hit one button on the phone, you're automatically connected with a UK Police telecommunications officer. Many of the phones also have 360-degree camera coverage, so that we can see what's going on as our telecommunications officers are speaking with the individual who's requesting assistance. they're placed throughout campus in a way that you're never more than a few hundred feet, or that there's some science or whatever behind it that I don't want to try to get too far into specifics on. But they are strategically placed in locations to be the most accessible to whoever might need them. Well, as far as statistics go, can you speak more to that since you've...
I'm not sure on the statistics, but we do utilize them often, and we are mandated to respond. Whether somebody taps it and runs and we don't hear anybody, we still are going to respond to that area to figure out what is happening and going on. So that's part of it. The other main purpose of those, what we call tap phones, are for announcements. They also turn as speakers. So if we were to have a tornado warning, God forbid, an active aggressor situation, those would gas leaks. There's something major, a flood, something going on. Those are strategically placed because those are going to be super loud speakers that are going to give you said announcement. That's one of their other main goals. And like Tristan said, the camera system will turn on when you hit them, and the audio as well. And so dispatchers will be able to physically see, within that area, or what direction somebody ran, or what is happening there. I do not know the statistics on them. That's something we could definitely, I would ask Property Deputy Chief Brown would have all the statistics on that, because we keep statistics on everything. But the fact that we keep implementing them, we start building like we build around here, you'll notice that new ones will be implemented because it's not just a deterrent. They are very successful. And again, just remember, they are also for announcements as well. You thought about putting them inside of residence halls. So obviously inside of a room at your dwelling, it's not legal for us to have cameras and things of that nature inside there. Now, we do have a lot of cameras in the common areas, down hallways, entrances to the dorm rooms, exits, which is also very beneficial for us.
Yeah, and one thing I would add to that too, especially thinking about students in the halls and whatnot with it, I don't know how many of you have the LiveSafe app on your phone as well, but it emulates kind of that blue box kind of experience where you can get an emergency signal to UKPD. It also is a great resource when you're traversing campus at night and you're just wanting to make sure someone's aware of where you're at. As well as there is a sexual assault and sexual violence section in the app as well. So all the things from UK Counseling, VIP Center, all the way down to Greenhouse 17 to Ampersand, all these different resources are here for students as well. And we've been having conversations with Deputy Chief Brown too about modernizations to this app, hopefully for next year, and maybe getting it even expanded out. So it's the idea that you can have that emergency button with you at all times, so that if you're traversing campus or in your hall and you need to notify UKPD, you can actually, through that LiveSafe app, do it as well. One other shameless plug for that too is it also allows you to text and talk with UKPD. And it can be done anonymously too, if you want to report crimes or tips or whatnot with it. And these things are typically housed in a different country in terms of the servers and the people who maintain them. So they truly are anonymous. And we find that a lot of our students too, sometimes if you're intimidated about making phone calls, using a LiveSafe app or something like that's a nice way of communicating with the police or finding those resources too for that.
Very good point.
Okay, we have our next
Very
question
good
over here.
I had an answer to that.
Oh,
Could I just say it really quickly? I'm a resident advisor at the Flats, and something that was recently added that's like the closest thing that comes to mind is like a blue button is the panic buttons. There's a physical panic button underneath the front desk. At least that's where it is in the Flats. Yeah, at all halls. I don't know exactly the placement of it, but in case an RA directly at the front desk sees like a transgression happening, they can hit that as well.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, again, so just to echo off of everybody, thank you guys for being here. I know it's 7 o'clock after 7 o'clock on a weeknight, so thank you all for your transparency and stuff tonight. Really appreciate that. I've got a question kind of surrounding something I heard in the beginning regarding those 2% of cases that are deemed as a threat to public safety. So as somebody who's not well versed in something like this, as maybe just a point of inquiry, or perhaps somebody who was looking to say, report something like this, and they were kind of concerned with what that means. What is that line there? How do you determine when someone commits an act of sexual violence, how do you determine whether or not that's a threat to public safety? What is that line?
Well, the majority of it has to do with if the perpetrator is known to the suspect or to the victim, if they know each other, and where that all started from. So when you see on movies, televisions, somebody jumping out of the bush and just attacking somebody they've never met, never know. And so 98 point whatever, we can know who that perpetrator is. And they are either, we've interviewed them, we detained them. It's a single person that they are out to harm, whether that's a sexual assault, physical assault, something of that nature. It is very rarely that the suspect is not known to the victim. Now, it could be an acquaintance in a class or somebody they go to the gym with, but they're able to identify them. So when we talk about that less than 2%, it's because we don't know who that suspect is. We don't know who the perpetrator is. And that is so far few in between. And to the point where first name, last name, date of birth, we have all the information, if not enough to be able to find out who they are very quickly. So that's part of the determining. In the event, like we talked about, some of the cases we have to not allow our survivors to stop a case is if they report something or we see something on a camera and it's an modus operandi that matches another case that was just reported or 3 or 4 over the last year. And we're like, holy cow, this person is the same one committing all these other crimes, to include the thefts or sexual assaults. Then we will go forward because they're, a nemesis to our society.
I will let Senator Hurley ask his question because he is so passionate about it. And then we will wrap this up.
Hi. So a little bit of context. I am a grad student that went to undergrad at UK. So I have been here since COVID. And I heard one point earlier that was brought up that new graduate students are given this sexual violence prevention training. Whenever I enrolled as a graduate student, I was not. I did not receive it as a freshman. So I'm kind of asking, kind of going into this depth of the vast majority of grad students at UK attended here for undergrad. We don't have a standardized form of orientation that we go to. We don't have a standardized Canvas module that we're put into. So what training is being put in place for them? What repetition is existing for students like me who haven't seen anything like this from the university since fall 2020?
Well, let me just say that I'm really glad that you told me that you didn't get sexual assault prevention for graduate students, because all new grad students should be getting that. And in fact, you shouldn't be allowed to enroll in classes unless you've had that. So I think what you're highlighting for me is that the system can be imperfect. So thank you. I appreciate that information. So there's an opportunity for me to explore that with the company that we work with, that we contract with to implement that particular training. So the other piece for graduate students is what I'll share with you. I also did my graduate degree here, and you are correct. We're kind of out there on our own. We're grown-ups, and we are expected to adult and like grown-ups, and so there is certainly a lot less touch points to grad students. What I like for our grad students to know is that we provide services to you, golden standard of services to grad students. But in addition to that, I think it's important for us to know that grad students are a unique demographic that have that might have a little bit different experience. And so the company that we contract with to do that actually gives us data about what people report. One of the questions that's asked is if you have had an experience with any type of interpersonal violence, whether it be sexual violence, dating, domestic violence, or stalking. And what we've learned from that data is that our grad students can be in any one of those violence types, can be about 30% of them have had that experience, compared to incoming undergraduate students where it's about 10% of those students. So that means that we're going to have to serve you a little different. The touch points that we give you probably need to be shaped in trauma-informed, survivor-centered things. right? And the reason why I'm saying that is because some grad students have already had this experience happen to them. And so it's important. So, number one, thank you for letting me know that. That's definitely information that I like to have. And very quickly, everyone in this room has been so gracious and generous to say thank you to us. I want to stop right here and say thank you to you all. Everyone on this panel tonight, we often work 40, 50, 60 hours a week because we care about this and because we care about you all. And this is an opportunity for you all to get to talk to us because we want to be accessible. And all of those hours of work, we want that to be meaningful to you all. So thank you for letting us sit up here and talk into microphones and say smart things. And I don't think I really answered your question. So I'm just going to acknowledge that I don't think I actually answered your question, but I want you to know that I acknowledge that that it's an imperfect system. I would like to learn how to figure out how to make that less imperfect. And that I think that when we're talking about our grad students, I think it's going to take a little different style. I think that's the best I got.
Can I piggyback on that? I will say I had to do it when I started as a grad student. So you fell through somehow. We'd love to know. But the other thing I'll say is that I think what is unique about the grad student experience, because it was eye-opening to me when I came back as a doctoral student, it had been a while since I had been enrolled in school. Like how to get my email, I couldn't figure it out. Like I felt so dumb as a person who was working at a university as a high-level administrator. I was like, why can I not figure this out? Because it's a challenge, right? And you're kind of on your own. And what's unique about that process is that as a graduate student, that orientation is so focused on your specific college. So I'd also really encourage you to find ways to engage with the leadership of the graduate, like the director of graduate studies within your college, and provide feedback on ways you think they could improve that process for graduate students, because sometimes they know and sometimes it's just a part of their job and they don't realize it. And that feedback provided in a good way is really helpful. And there are programs that do some of those orientation pieces built into that new graduate student. Some schools are better at it. Some schools and colleges are better at it than others. Like there are some colleges we go and do training about the university policies and reporting and all that with every year with their new graduate students, but it is not most of them. So I would really encourage you to realize that it takes all of us, like just like the name of it's on us, it takes all of us. It's not just us that prevents it. It's also you all that prevents it and shapes that culture. And so I'd really encourage you to provide that feedback in a positive way to your college and provide some really good ideas that they can do that, because I think it's good feedback and they probably are open to it, and may just not have had the space to honestly think about it and put that and implement it.
Awesome. Well, first off, I just want to say thank you all so much again for coming out and talking to us and giving this opportunity to kind of share kind of how we can go about making a bigger impact on our campus. And thank you all to who all came out tonight. And I'm sorry it went over a little bit, but just immense thankfulness out of me. So that's all. And I hope you all have a great rest of your evening.
We thought we were here till 7:30. So I mean,
and we appreciate
and now that's
the
on the
questions.
record. So that's perfect for me.
And we appreciate the questions. It's so nice to come and actually have the questions. Thank you.
And as I said earlier, spread the word. Get us out there. Let's talk.
We do have SVU brochures if anyone wants one to share with classmates, friends, colleagues.
Whatever you